What? Why are you shaking your head?
You're welcome.
What is going on, guys? It's week 3 cashing points. I'm here with Graham Barfield and Ryan Heath. We have a lot to get to. 13-game slate this week. So let's get right into it, guys. Green Bay Packers at the Cleveland Browns. Packers are 8.5-point favorites here. Total 41.5. On the Green Bay side, no Jaden Reed. He broke his collarbone, unfortunately. Also looks like no Tucker Kraft after he missed Friday's practice, although he is listed as questionable. There's some very weird reporting in general with Tucker Kraft's knee injury. I really don't think he's going to play this week. Ryan, I'm going to throw it over to you for this Green Bay side. I think Jordan Love is a little bit interesting given that he's not drawing any ownership here. Also, Packers pass catchers could end up a little bit more condensed than usual, and we do have some decent discount options, especially if Tucker Kraft missed. What do you think about the Green Bay side here?
Yeah, Love is interesting. I agree. Much more of like a large field Millie type of play, probably based on all the other value we have on this slate, especially at quarterback. But yeah, he's just been so efficient. Like, if the Packers want to win through the air, and I think there's a good chance that that's what they're going to have to do based on how the Browns have just limited these opposing running backs. I mean, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown combined for 33 rushing yards per game against them the last 2 games. So yeah, the way to beat this Browns defense has been through the air. I think Love is interesting for that. But I am probably more into kind of the punt options that Kraft and Reed being out open up here. So Dontavian Wicks, just 3,700. This is the ideal man-heavy cover one matchup for Wicks. Since the start of last season, he has a 40% target per route run against man coverage. That is behind literally only Puka Nacua. He is so sick of a man beater. He does have to catch the ball, but hey, he's only 3,700. He only needs to catch a few, only needs to catch a touchdown. He can do it. I believe in him. It's a great schematic matchup, as we said. He has been running from the slot, which is even better with Jaden Reed out because that's also the weak spot of this Browns secondary. So yeah, give me Wicks as like a way to get to these much more unique builds because I don't think anyone really wants to punt wide receiver this week. So that's really great. And then Luke Musgrave kind of similarly, just 2,700. He's a pretty solid tight end punt. In his career, 9 games above a 60% snap share. He's at 38 receiving yards per game on 3.6 catches per game. Not blowing anyone away. Again, probably needs to catch a touchdown for punting to be worth it, but he's better than a lot of these total random tight end punts that we have gotten in weeks and in years past because this was a highly drafted player. They did really seem to like him this offseason, and Kraft just kind of stole his job and was way better after he got hurt in his rookie season. But Musgrave kind of looked on his way to being like a real NFL player. So both those guys are really solid, and that's mostly where my mind is on this game.
Yeah, I think I'm in a similar spot to you. One of the interesting things with Wicks is that if this was a week 14 slate where, everyone's priced up, pricing's pretty tight, Wicks is going to be popular. But, this week there is a ton of backup quarterbacks that are very, very cheap. You really don't need to fit a guy like Dontavian Wicks in to build a strong lineup. So Wicks not going to pull much ownership, and that does make me pretty tempted here in a great schematic matchup like you outlined. Graham, we're always interested in playing Josh Jacobs as a heavy favorite. Cleveland's run defense is pretty solid. They obviously didn't give up much to Derrick Henry and company last week. Any interest in Jacobs here?
Yeah, I do, especially at this ownership, right? Like, he's just such a good bet for a touchdown every single week. It's kind of a similar bet to Derrick Henry last week. I tweeted this out that Jacobs is like the Derrick Henry corollary, basically. Like, yeah, it's a top 10 offense. They're going to be scoring a ton. He's going to be getting the ball in the red zone a ton. Yeah, the one thing that gives me pause, though, is the matchup, like Ryan alluded to. I just want to say, I think Luke Musgrave is the nuts. Like, I think he's an awesome play. Like, 2,700. Especially on this slate where everybody's going to be paying down at quarterback. Like, you pay down at quarterback, you pay down at tight end, like you can just kind of do whatever you want. You can play, you can pay up for running back twice, pay up for CeeDee Lamb, pay up for Puka Nacua. I think if we get Musgrave, he's like one of the best tight end plays on this slate.
Yeah, I think Musgrave is very interesting too, and kind of similar to Wicks. Like I said, like I don't think you're gonna have a lot of builds that force you into Musgrave, so that probably won't mean that he ends up particularly popular this week. Graham, any interest on the Cleveland side of this game? I kind of want to roll with mostly Packers onslaughts here. If I am stacking this game, maybe some Josh Jacobs and Packers defense. I mean, Jerry Jeudy projects as an okay value. Harold Bannon projects as a pretty decent tight end value. But man, it could be really gross on the Cleveland side of the ball. The implied total here is nasty.
Yeah, the only guy I want to play is Fannin.
Yeah.
Packers, if they have like one weakness, it's against tight ends. Laporta got him for 79 yards. Ertz had a good game last week, 64 yards and a touchdown on 6 catches. Fannin's kind of getting that wide receiver 3-ish usage. He's also getting a little more in-line usage too. I think all of us kind of thought he'd be a kind of big slot receiver, move player. But they lined him up in line last week. Straight up earning more targets per route run than David Njoku. He's 3,600. It's a fair price. Like I said, I think I prefer Musgrave. He should be a full-time player in this offense. But yeah, Fannin would be the only Browns player I'm really interested in this week.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ryan, anything to add on the Browns side before we move on here?
Yeah, Fannin's the only guy I have interest in. Packers, I say every week, are very much an underneath funnel. As Graham outlined, it's a solid tight end matchup.
All right. Let's move on to the New York Jets at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Jets are 6.5-point dogs. Total here is 43.5. On the injury front, no Justin Fields for the Jets. We're going to see Tyrod Taylor start in this game. Ryan, really curious if you have any interest on the Jets side of this game. Obviously, this is a slate that is largely defined by backup quarterbacks. Tyrod not popping much in projections overall because we have guys like Mariota and Carson Wentz who are really, really popping on this slate. But I do think you had an interesting angle in advanced matchups on the Jets side of this game.
Yeah, so I think Garrett Wilson is certainly my favorite play in this game. It's a really great schematic matchup for him against a lot of cover 3, a lot of blitzing. That's what Todd Bowles loves to do. Wilson has a very nice efficiency bump against both of those things. And the nice thing is we can feel pretty assured that the Jets are going to have to throw the ball in this game, even if they don't want to, which they will not want to. But yeah, it's a 7-point spread. They aren't going to have much choice. The Buccaneers being the NFL's biggest pass funnel, both last year and they are up there this year. They've also been funneling a lot of volume to opposing wide receiver ones, getting over a 41% first read target share to both Drake London and Nico Collins. So I think Wilson is a really, really nice play here. I'll be a little bit ownership sensitive, but I don't think he's going to end up among like the 5 or so most popular wide receivers. So yeah, that's pretty exciting to me. He's getting a 34% target share. That's just very solid. And Tyrod Taylor is not like a huge downgrade, guys. I mean, in 3 of his last 4 full games, this with the Giants in 2023, he got at least one receiver over 17 DK. He got Darius Slayton to average over 20 DK in his final 2 games. Like this is not like a total jobber at quarterback. Like he can actually create fantasy production for a guy like Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, I was a little surprised when, looking across the industry at projections, just seeing Garrett Wilson project, pretty well overall. And it makes sense. Like you said, Tyrod Taylor, not a big downgrade for the passing game. This is also a game where the Jets are likely going to be forced to throw as pretty decent underdogs here. Graham, who do you like on the Tampa Bay side of this game? Bucky Irving, Mike Evans, both sort of popping in projection, should both be fairly popular in this one.
Yeah, we were just talking about Josh Jacobs. I think Bucky Irving is a better play at basically the same price point. Irving's 7,100. Jets have been okay on run defense, but we're getting Bucky as a touchdown favorite here. Our guy Darren Manser, who does our ownership projections on the site, he has Bucky plugged in at 14% ownership. I like that quite a bit. I don't think he's not going to push for like 20%. This kind of mid-range ownership. Rashad White got the goal line carry to kind of close the game out last week, but it was still heavy Bucky. Like this is a 70-30, 75-25 split. Bucky's really the only play I kind of want to make on this side, right? Like I have concerns about the Jets keeping this game close. This is a week to pay down at quarterback. Baker's price is fine, man, but like I'm just looking elsewhere.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. My favorite way to play this game is probably with a mini stack, Bucky Irving, Garrett Wilson. I think you can get a lot of the fantasy points there. Mike Evans, we're a little bit worried about a potential Sauce Gardner shadow. Tampa Bay might not be really forced to throw in this game environment. Before I move on, got to acknowledge my boy Tyler with the super chat. Yeah, Tyler, of course, Kevontae Turpin is worth more starting in a points per USFL grown-ass man league. Really appreciate that chat. We actually also got a question in the chat a few minutes ago about some games that we think could pop off outside of the obvious, chalk game that we'll get to in the afternoon slate with Dallas and Chicago. And this is one that I think is pretty interesting in the Los Angeles Rams at the Philadelphia Eagles. Rams are 3.5-point dogs. Total here is 44.5. Only major injury note here is that Dallas Goedert is back, no injury designation, so he will return. Graham, we were talking about this spot this morning in our projections meeting. This is, most weeks we'll get some of these interesting spots for quarterbacks where, on their own, they don't project well. And I'm talking about Matthew Stafford here. He's sort of a mediocre value. But then when you look at the stack, two of our top 6 or top 8 value wide receivers are Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams. So the stack starts to project really well. Then you look at the other side of this game, you have A.J. Brown at a historically low price tag, cheapest he's been since the 2020 season. You also have Saquon Barkley, who can break any slate. I could sort of easily see a version of this game, Graham, where, all of the fantasy points on the Rams side go to Puka and Devontae, and then you have A.J. Brown and Saquon busting off some big plays. What do you think of this game in general and specifically the Rams side?
Yeah, love Devontae Adams. He's one of the best values in our projections on the slate. I don't think he's going to be super popular either, which is awesome. He's 6,200, same price as Garrett Wilson. I sort of prefer Adams to Wilson, like straight up. It's twofold. Like Adams is future Hall of Famer, still playing an extremely high level. He's 4th best by yards per route run right now at 2.9. Nacua is just crushing everybody, averaging nearly 5 yards per route run to start the season. But yeah, man, I mean, I think the Eagles, they've got a really good run defense. They're going to be able to kind of control this game a little bit, force the Rams to throw. Adams is, going to push for double-digit targets, and this price, like, he should be a 7K receiver. Adams just looks like a screaming value. I want to play Stafford doubles. Like, that's where my head's at, but like you kind of said, it's difficult. He's 5,700. It's just the right price for him. But I mean, Stafford doubles with Saquon makes a ton of sense just for this game in general. Obviously, Barkley went absolutely ham on the Rams. The last time these two teams played, had over 300 scrimmage yards. Certainly could see a big ceiling game for Saquon. And the way you play it is, Stafford has to throw it 45 times to keep this game close. And it's only going to be to 2 guys.
Yeah, exactly. And, like you said, on the other side, the Eagles can provide the big plays that sort of push the Rams into a very pass-heavy approach. Ryan, what do you think about this game here? Because especially as 1 p.m. slate games go, this is certainly one of my favorites.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys. I think Stafford doubles are going to be my favorite way to attack it, but you can also kind of do minis. You can also just go Jalen Hurts and a receiver plus both Rams as a bring back. If you want to say that Hurts is going to fall into the end zone on a tush push or 2, like I think that is a completely viable way to go too. I guess just 2 like angles I want to bring up here from the Eagles side. One is that Saquon completely destroyed the Rams last year. He was at 45.7 DK fantasy points per game against the Rams last year, which is kind of insane to me. Like I need to go double check that number. Like it's actually nuts that that's what's in front of me right now. Saquon can rip off a big play and completely change this game environment and the game flow at any point. He's going to be my preference. But I think there's a somewhat interesting angle with A.J. Brown here as well. The Eagles have basically seen the most 2 high looks in the league through 2 weeks. Just 33% of the time they've seen single high. And A.J. Brown is dramatically better against these single high looks. It's a 93% boost to his yards per out run since the start of last season. So yeah, any way you want to play it, I'm not going to get too upset. As I said, Stafford doubles plus 1 bring back will be my favorite, but yeah, you can kind of mix and match however you want here.
Yeah, Ryan, you stole the words right out of my mouth. No team has run more single high thus far than the Los Angeles Rams. I also would imagine the Rams will want to load the box against Saquon Barkley, given that he combined for about 500 yards in his 2 games against Los Angeles last season. Yeah, really think this could be a great spot for A.J. Brown. You have anything to add there, Graham?
Yeah, I wanted to say, I mean, if we get, so right now Darren's projecting 11% ownership for Barkley and basically double that for Bijan and McCaffrey. Like, that should not be the case here, like, at all. Like, Barkley should be 20% owned, just as owned as Bijan and McCaffrey. And we're getting a little price dip too, which is nice. He's been 8K to start the season. He's now 7,800. Again, great, like you've been outlining, Jake, just great week to pay down a quarterback. I think Barkley, like, pound for pound, is my favorite running back play on the slate.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of really fun angles you can take this game, and Barkley and A.J. Brown are certainly 2 of them. Let's move on to the Atlanta Falcons at the Carolina Panthers. Atlanta is a 5.5 point favorite here. Total is 43.5. On the injury front, Carolina lost a pair of starting offensive linemen, Robert Hunt and Austin Corbett, to injured reserve. On the Atlanta side, A.J. Terrell is out, setting up Tet McMillan with a solid matchup here. Ryan, let's start on the Carolina side, because I think there's really only one play that we are interested in. How do you feel about Tet in this game? Because he's looked quite good through 2 weeks. I think, it's safe to say he's going to be an alpha wide receiver for many years to come. The only question is, can Carolina put together a competent offensive performance against an Atlanta defense that might actually be pretty decent?
Yeah, that is the only question. That's the only reason to not play Tet McMillan this week, is if you just think Bryce Young will be so terrible. But yeah, it kind of sets up as a perfect matchup. The Falcons were allowing the most schedule adjusted to outside receivers last year. This year, they have allowed the highest target share to the outside. Gonna get even worse with no Terrell. And Ted McMillan has just looked amazing through 2 games. 9+ targets in each. All of the film guys are like totally ranting and raving about him this week and how amazing he looks. So yeah, even up at 5,900, he's like a solid guy I want to be mixing in to just mostly mini stacks for this game probably. But yeah, I think he's a solid way to kind of throw him into a lineup like opposite a Bijan Robinson, reduce your total ownership while staying a little bit correlated there. So I think that's pretty solid.
Yeah, I'm with you. Not seeing a ton of ownership on Tet, and always like to kind of remind myself that this time last year we were paying about $1,000 more for Marvin Harrison Jr. Graham, Bijan Robinson obviously looks like a great play. I think it's, the Atlanta side of this game is interesting in the sense that they sort of all have great matchups, but I think everyone really wants to lean in to the rushing side of this game for Atlanta. Bijan has obviously looked awesome. Carolina's run defense was the worst in the league last year, looking bottom 8 again this year. What are your thoughts on Bijan and any other plays you like from Atlanta?
Yeah, dude, Bijan is, I just said Barkley's like my favorite player pound for pound. Bijan's like right there, like right behind him. Bijan plus Falcons defense makes a lot of sense. Like, Falcons finally have a pass rush. It's been 10 years since they've had a decent pass rush, it feels like, and they've got a legitimately good rotation to kind of put Bryce Young in hell. Bijan's floor is just insane. I mean, he scored 20 or more DK points in all of his last, 13, 14 games, except for 2. Again, he has this kind of like super, super high floor where he can get to 20 DK without scoring a touchdown. He does it routinely. Falcons are actually the 4th most run heavy offense so far by pass rate, I guess, under expectation. So yeah, I mean, Bijan, Barkley, you really kind of can't go wrong there. I know the projections still love McCaffrey over these guys, but I'd have it pretty close, honestly, between all 3. And given their prices, I mean, Bijan and Barkley just really stand out. And again, great week to pay down a quarterback. It's very easy to fit these guys into lineups, especially if you're also punting tight end this week. I want no Falcons pass catchers. Like, these guys just have not had a ceiling for 2 or 3 years. Like, the guy who has the best matchup here is Kyle Pitts, and he's 3,900. I have like no interest, but Pitts crushes cover 3. Panthers play a ton of cover 3. I don't really know what to do with that, but yeah, I just kind of want to play Bijan, Falcons defense. Tet's fine. 5,900 is definitely fine for him, but Bijan Falcons D is the way I'm thinking through this game.
Yeah, I certainly think that's reasonable. And, Kyle Pitts has looked a little bit better, a little bit quicker on film. So, I think he's a fine play at 3,900. A guy who I'll probably have a little bit of just because I tend to 150 max is Drake London. 6K. He was a top 10 wide receiver preseason in, best ball, season-long stuff. So I have a little bit of interest there. I do just worry that Atlanta might not have to throw here. This game could play a little slower, a little grosser, and that certainly plays into Bijan's hands. Let's move on to the Indianapolis Colts at the Tennessee Titans. Colts are 4.5-point favorites. Total here is 43.5. On the injury front, Tyler Warren is listed as questionable with a toe issue. Titans side is fairly clean, though. Ryan, Daniel Jones has been the most productive quarterback on the main slate through 2 weeks. He's only 5,400 priced as the QB 16. And I think the other interesting angle with Daniel Jones is that every single pass catcher in this game on both sides, this is something me and Graham talked about on the early look that we put out on Tuesdays. Every single pass catcher on both sides is 5,100 or cheaper. So this is a pretty easy game to stack up if you want to go that direction. What do you think of Daniel Jones and the Colts side of this game?
Yeah, I do think Jones is very solid for pretty much the reason you just said. Like we've seen the Titans get kind of run over by the Rams last week. Shane Steichen could just do the same thing. Like Steichen is out here just playing Madden, and Daniel Jones is not getting in the way of it. And the offensive results have been pretty amazing. So yeah, Jones is definitely in play for me. Both Michael Pittman and Tyler Warren are projecting pretty well. Both guys that I am going to want to have pieces of. I think that's probably just the optimal way to do it, is to double him with those two guys. The Titans also play a lot of cover 4. This is like a very minor note. I think I'd only get to this if I were like 150 maxing, but that is a really good schematic matchup for both Josh Downs and Alec Pierce. Pretty interestingly, I don't know. This Colts side is just very crowded pass catcher wise, kind of after Pittman and Warren. I don't feel like amazing about either Downs or Pierce's role, but that's something to consider. But I do disagree with Graham, because I think the best pound for pound running back play on the slate is Jonathan Taylor here at 7,200. Pretty negatively correlated, him and Jones, so I would not play them together. But Taylor is at 27 fantasy points per game over his last 5. Over the past 3 seasons, Taylor is over 100 rushing yards per game in wins. So he's hitting the bonus just on average when the Colts win. That's third most behind only Henry and Barkley at almost 20 fantasy points per game just in any win in the last 3 years. Like, this role is awesome for Taylor. He's playing more snaps this year. It helps that they're winning, but yeah, I want a lot of Taylor. That's going to be my main way of attacking this game, but Jones is interesting. I will give him that.
Yeah, really like me some Jonathan Taylor. Something that I thought was interesting, I was, simming with our projections earlier today, yesterday. I was getting a lot of Daniel Jones lineups that also included Jonathan Taylor. I think if the Colts end up scoring 30 plus here, you can just get basically every touchdown with Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor. Graham, any love for the Titans side of this game? I mean, Tony Pollard has seen great usage, but has been horrifically inefficient. Calvin Ridley and Ayumanor are out there. That's about the best you could say right now. Yeah, any love for the Titans side here?
Not really, no. Yeah. I mean, it's just been rough for Cam Ward to start. He's had a couple flashes, but just no real measure of consistency with this play. The Colts, they don't have the best pass rush, but they're going to get their guy Letu back this week. He's their best pass rusher. I don't know. I was pretty much off Ridley all year. Pollard certainly could make like a volume-based case for him. That's for sure. The only note I wanted to make on JT is he's an awesome play. All these guys, all the 7K guys, are great plays this week. The only thing is I do imagine JT's probably going to be one of the highest owned plays on the slate. That his ownership is projecting 15, 16, 17, 18%. That's going to come way up. He projects so well, arguably projects better or just as good as Bijan and Barkley. That's the one thing. I do think he's going to push for 20, 22% ownership in a lot of single entry, 3 entry max stuff this week on DK.
Yeah, especially if we see, guys like Wentz, Mariota, push for a ton of ownership. That's going to bring the ownership of all those expensive running backs way, way up because it just opens everything else up for your lineup. Let's move on to one of those super cheap quarterbacks in the Las Vegas Raiders at Washington Commanders game. Raiders are 2.5-point dogs. Total here is 43.5. On the injury front, got a lot to say for Washington. Jaden Daniels has been ruled out. Full game of Marcus Mariota here. Noah Brown is also out with a groin issue. Austin Eckler lost for the season due to a torn Achilles. On the Raiders side, Brock Bowers logged a few limited practices. He has no injury designation. Should be good to go in this one. Graham, let's start with Marcus Mariota. I think in the battle of 4K quarterbacks, and I imagine the field's going to agree with me on this, he is the superior option to Carson Wentz because he obviously does provide you more on the ground. I think the trickiest part with Mariota is just sort of figuring out who to stack him with. I don't know that I have a super strong preference between McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, even Zach Ertz. What do you think regarding Marcus Mariota and some potential stacking partners there?
So we had that question in chat, like which game stands out as, potential sneaky shootout. And to me, in the 1 p.m. window, this is it. Like, Commanders always play fast. They're always up in pace. They always run a ton of plays. The Raiders have been the third most pass-heavy team so far by pass rate over expectation. So if Geno plays, Geno's going to play better than he did on Monday night. If Geno plays even just like remotely well, we get like week 1-ish Geno, this game is probably going to go over the total. I don't know if it has like 60-point upside, but it certainly has quite a bit of upside. Mariota just projects insanely well, like across the industry, projects really, really well. He's going to come up in ownership for sure. I think everybody's going to kind of see what we're seeing, that he is a much better play than Wentz. Like, Wentz is a total mystery box. Like, he's gotten 2 starts. He's not played well in them. They've both been week 18 starts. Mariota got 2 games of relief work last season and played really well. Went 33 of 40, had over 360 yards, had 4 touchdowns, also, ran quite a bit. He had 16 carries and 1 touchdown. I think Geno is just an awesome play. My favorite way to stack him is with Deebo. I like Zach Ertz, but man, he's 4,200. It's too expensive, I think, for Ertz. But I think Deebo, no Eckler, maybe gets an extra design target or 2. Obviously, he's got, the touchdown upside both on the ground and through the air. Deebo would be my favorite way to stack him. He's overpriced. Where we got Ted at 5,900, Drake London, he's fine. I know I just kind of poo-pooed him, but he definitely projects better than Deebo. So you're probably not going to get a ton of ownership on Samuel in this spot. So I think, Jake, what do you think? Mariota's the cash quarterback this week, right? Like, for sure.
Yeah, I haven't played with a ton of cash builds, but I mean, you got to think when a guy's projecting for almost 5 fantasy points per dollar, that is right. About as extreme of a value as you will see. And yeah, you're right. In relief work last year, Mariota averaged about 22 fantasy points per game. Looked really good. Also, just looking at his like career game logs, some of the most efficient games of his career, 77% completion percentage. It seems like he's really gelling with Cliff Kingsbury. Ryan, I'm curious about your thoughts on the Raiders side of this game. I think the Washington side is, pretty straightforward. Obviously, we like Mariota. Don't mind pairing him with Deebo, Terry, Zach Ertz. What do you think about the Raiders side of this game? Are there any viable run backs here? I'm a little interested in Brock Bowers just because, we know that's a guy who can put up a big score, and I don't think he's going to pull a ton of ownership. Jacoby Myers always projects well. What do you think?
Yeah, Bowers is where I was going to go first. So, I mean, he was just a limited practice all week, all 3 days. Last week, he was DNP Wednesday, Thursday, limited Friday. But last week, still up at a 79% route share after all the discourse in week 1 about how he didn't run enough routes or play enough snaps, up at basically the top of the ranks for the tight ends in route participation. He had that 35% targets per route run in week 1. As Graham said, the Raiders, one of the most pass-heavy teams through 2 weeks. Yeah, Bowers is expensive. He's $6K, but this is in a game where you get to play a 4K quarterback, yeah, I think Bowers is clearly my favorite run back for tournaments. Myers is fine. Yeah, he projects decently well, getting a good workload, but it's Jacoby Myers. It is what he is. He always is priced around between 5 and 6K, and he's always like a solid play, but never a guy that completely goes off. So yeah, definitely prefer Bowers as the run back. Do want to make sure we mention Ashton Jeanty though. I think he might be my favorite tournament running back. And that's not because he projects particularly well or anything like that, but we're looking at almost certainly single-digit ownership with all the running back value on this slate. And we have a bit of a squeaky wheel narrative with them wanting to get him more touches. And the Commanders last year were the NFL's most extreme run funnel by PRO allowed. Dan Quinn is always kind of defaulting to these nickel formations. Last year was leading the NFL in rate of having 5 or more DBs on the field against opposing rush attempts. He's basically up at that this year. The Commanders haven't gotten run on a ton over the first 2 games, but I think that's a pretty interesting angle where we just get the Ashton Jeanty statement game week 3. Yeah, guys, I'm really good. I was this uber elite prospect that can just juke 10 guys on every play. That's something I want to mix into my lineups, especially with Mariota lineups. So that's just something not to forget about.
Yeah, I think that is an interesting angle. You know, if you're just going off of sort of default industry projections, I don't think you're going to get a lot of Brock Bowers and certainly not a lot of Jeanty in your Marcus Mariota lineups, like as run back options. So definitely like that. Final guy I just wanted to mention really quick, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. I know there's at least someone listening going like, what about him without Eckler? I projected this game, and like, you know, if you go back to last season, we had a decent sample size of games with no Austin Eckler. Jeremy McNichols was still running a lot of pass routes. It was not that strong of a workload for Brian Robinson at the time. JCM just does not project particularly well in this game. I think if you're really stacking it up, if you anticipate this being, like Graham said, potentially one of the best games of the 1 p.m. slate, maybe you could work a little JCM in there. But there are just better options, especially given some of the sub 6K running back values that have opened up due to injuries.
I just want to note Bowers is off the injury report, and if you're playing Mariota and stacking Mariota, like, you're going to have the salary to get up to Bowers, like, for sure. So I think Bowers is like the clear guy on the Raiders side to kind of bring this back with.
Yeah, absolutely. And not going to pull too much ownership, seeing 7, 8, 9% around the industry right now. Let's move on to a game that's not going to pull a lot of ownership. Pittsburgh Steelers at the New England Patriots. Pittsburgh is favored by 1.5. Total here is 44.5. Only major injury here is Christian Gonzalez is questionable. Otherwise, this game is pretty clean from an injury perspective. Ryan, Patriots pass defense has just been awful. Could this be the get right spot for DK Metcalf? Only 5,700 here.
I think it could be, yeah. I don't know how much I'm going to get to just because it's such a big slate with so many good wide receiver values. But yeah, if you're looking for the Metcalf get right spot, it is definitely this. Pat's top 5 by pass rate over expectation allowed, second most DK fantasy points to opposing receivers over the first 2 weeks, second most receiving yards on the deep ball. So yeah, all of this just screams DK Metcalf. Even if Christian Gonzalez is back, I don't think he just instantly fixes all the problems with the secondary. All of these Mike Vrabel defenses just want to stop the run first and foremost, and that has always kind of come at the expense of being these very big pass funnels. So yeah, I think Metcalf is pretty solid here. He would certainly be my favorite play on that side of the game.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Jaylen Warren is actually projecting okay. It's going to be hard to get there when we have Kenneth Walker and Jordan Mason, who we will talk about in a little bit here. But he did have 67% of backfield carries last week. That ended up being 14 carries, another 4 targets on top of it. So there is, 15 to 20 touch upside for Jaylen Warren. I'm probably only interested in it in like an Aaron Rodgers stack, which is something that I'm probably only getting to in like a 150 set, especially like a 1 p.m. only 150 set. But yeah, that could be a slightly interesting angle. Graham, Drake May is projecting well. He's a top 6 quarterback value in our stuff. The big problem with May, though, is that I just really don't feel confident stacking him with just about anyone on his team. Do you have any love for Drake May? Any interest in his potential stacking partners here?
Yeah, he's 5,300. I mean, it's definitely a good price, but
Yeah.
It's twofold. Like you just said, no idea who to stack him with. My favorite would probably be Kayshon Boutte, but I mean, he's 4,600. He should probably be a little closer to like 42 or 4K. Second thing is like this game just could be a total nightmare, like in terms of pace and play and all that stuff. Pittsburgh, obviously, Arthur Smith, Aaron Rodgers, they want to play slow. Patriots, that week one pass rate was kind of an aberration. They were a lot more balanced last week. I don't have a whole lot of interest in this game. I think they're much better plays. And you mentioned Jaylen Warren. Like, I don't see the upside, man. Like, yeah, he's going to get the 15 touches. He's probably going to get 3 or 4 dump offs. He has gotten 70% of the inside 10 carries, but like, again, this is a Steelers offense that doesn't project all that well. And Jordan Mason, like, he's going to be massive chalk, but Mason is like such a superior play.
Yeah. And we also have Ken Walker too. It's tough in that price range when we have 2 guys who are going to project really, really strong. Let's talk about Jordan Mason. Cincinnati Bengals at the Minnesota Vikings. Bengals are 3-point underdogs here. Total is 42.5. Injuries. No Joe Burrow on the Bengals side. No JJ McCarthy or Aaron Jones on the Vikings side. Ryan, I'll start with you here. Let's talk Bengals. I thought one of your interesting stats from 5 Stats to Know is that Jake Browning actually good for fantasy.
Yeah, Jake Browning is good, actually. I'm standing on that. I really wish he wasn't 5,500. Like, if we were getting 4K Jake Browning, that would be very, very fun. So, yeah, I don't know. At 5,500, probably not getting to him. He's at about 20.5 fantasy points per game across 7 starts in 2023. Like, solid enough, but not like a top value or anything like that on this slate. Probably the biggest note with the Jake Browning version of the Bengals offense is it suddenly became a lot more screen heavy, and that very likely benefits Jamar Chase just because he is kind of the one that they have been giving easy button touches to over the last year plus 2 games, and also Chase Brown a little bit, just getting some more like easy button schemed looks to the running backs. I don't think anybody that I just mentioned is like a premier play on this slate, though. I don't know, like this game could be a little bit gross. Both the Vikings and Bengals are bottom 10 in pace this year. I'm just kind of looking elsewhere this week with so many good options.
Yeah, I'm with you. I have a little bit of interest in Jamar Chase, especially with the offense going so screen heavy. I think that really hurts T. Higgins. That's just not really his game. Chase Brown is okay. It is hard to have a ton of interest in this game. I think the Vikings side is a lot more interesting, Graham, because we have a couple of players who project as excellent values, obviously starting with Carson Wentz, who's only 4K. I know we already talked about him sort of versus Marcus Mariota, but he's a really strong play in this spot against a terrible Bengals defense.
Yeah, KOC, this offense, this is, O'Connell's offense is probably the most quarterback friendly in the NFL. I mean, it's up there. It's definitely one of the top 3 most quarterback friendly offenses. But like I was kind of saying, like, I think the one pushback you can make against Jordan Mason chalk this week, I mean, he is an awesome play. He's 5,400. They've got backup running back and Xavier Scott, who I hadn't heard of until this preseason. They brought in Cam Akers to back Scott up. I don't even think he's going to play this week. Like, he's going to get 90% of the snaps here. The one pushback, though, is like Wentz has not been good, like, at all in his last 2 starts. I'm kind of willing to throw his last start out last year because the Chiefs rested everybody, and the Broncos were full out for that game in Week 18 to make the playoffs. But I mean, he has just not been good since like 2018, and just got the playbook basically a month ago. There's a chance that he could be just a total nightmare. But the flip side is like the Bengals have a bottom 5 defense. My favorite way to like kind of get contrarian with Mason chalk is to play him with Jamar Chase, for all the reasons that Ryan just lined up. I also kind of agree that Jake Browning is one of the better backups in the NFL. It's not, he's like a Mac Jones type level backup quarterback where there's not, there's a big drop off, obviously, in terms of the touchdown rate and stuff. The Bengals were 17th in scoring drives and Browning starts. But yeah, I mean, he was top 5 in catchable throw rate. Everybody is going to be wanting to play Lamb and Puka, but I think Chase will probably be like 7-8%, and Jordan Mason will be the highest owned player on this slate by a margin, like 35%, 40% single entry stuff probably. Chase, easy way to kind of get contrarian, and we obviously know what kind of ceiling Jamar Chase has.
Yeah, I do really like that angle. I think if you're stacking Wentz, you're exclusively using Justin Jefferson. You can mix in a little Hawkinson, a little Jalen Naylor, but you really just want Justin Jefferson.
For what it's worth, Brett thinks Hawk is like dead. Like he was watching his tape and just like he was like the route running and everything just does not look the same from him. So I think it is just Jefferson, honestly.
That's tough. I mean, normally you'd see a $3,800 price tag for TJ Hawkinson.
Yeah, I know, right? That caught my eye too.
Excited, but there are better value tight ends on this slate, unfortunately, for TJ Hawkinson. All right, I think we covered this game pretty well. Let's move on to a kind of gross one. Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Texans are 1.5 point underdogs. Total is 43.5. On the injury front, Christian Kirk is back for the Texans. Brian Thomas carries no injury designation after Liam Cohen noted that Brian Thomas had a previously unreported wrist injury post-game after their week 2 loss to Cincinnati. Graham, my gut tells me that I should still be taking some shots on Trevor Lawrence in this Liam Cohen offense, that eventually they're going to have a blow up spot like we saw plenty of times last year from Tampa Bay. But, in a week 3 matchup against Houston, it just really doesn't feel like that's the time to lean into any Trevor Lawrence stuff. What do you think about the Jag side of this game here?
Yeah, I haven't played Trevor Lawrence in DFS his entire career, and I've never regretted it, and I'm going to continue to full fade this guy, especially this week. Yeah, Brian Thomas, he had a really bad game, obviously, week 2. Week 1, Trevor Lawrence had a really bad game and missed Thomas on a number of throws, and now he gets to face Derek Stingley. My one note in this game is like we've been trying to make Travis Hunter a thing for 2 weeks, and it just obviously it has not worked. Jarrian Jones, the Jags corner, he got hurt in the middle of the game last week, and Hunter had to play more corner. He is off the injury report. I would expect Hunter to kind of get back to the 70-ish% route share with third down duties at corner. And this is a pretty good matchup. Like if you want to just like completely, I'm not sure if I'm going to be playing Travis Hunter. I'm not trying to say he's like this awesome play, but 4,900 is fine for him. By XFP, he's been just behind Thomas, like 2.5, 3 points behind him in terms of his role. And the Texans have been pretty bad against slot receivers so far, giving up the 4th most yards per game. I'm not like stoked to play Hunter by any means, but I think a little like Nico, Travis Hunter in a large field tournament, little mini stack makes some sense. Nico has just owned the Jaguars in his career.
Yeah. I'm a little bit with you on Travis Hunter. No one's going to play him this week, 4,900. I think the other angle here with Travis Hunter is that obviously he's getting all the design stuff. Some people are calling him fancy Wan'Dale Robinson, but that does sort of look good in a game against Houston where, their pass rush is just fantastic. I think Jacksonville's really going to want to lean in to that design stuff. And then obviously, Brian Thomas Jr. not playing great, likely shadowed by Derek Stingley here. Ryan, anybody else to like in this game? I know Scott Barrett wrote up Daimi Brown as maybe like a Galaxy Brain 4,400 guy. I don't really think I can go there. This is kind of a tough game to like anything outside of maybe like a one-off or a mini stack like Graham outlined.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at as well. Like I don't hate how the running backs match up just in terms of outside zone against the Texans, where they've been getting kind of burned so far this season. But like on a slate with so much running back value, I don't think you need to go to Travis Etienne here. I'm kind of with you. Like Nico is a decent play, and then everybody else here is just not that interesting to me.
Yeah, that is Unfortunate. Let's move on to the 4 p.m. slate. We are going to kick things off with the New Orleans Saints at the Seattle Seahawks, leading off a 4-game, 4 p.m. slate. The Saints are 7.5-point underdogs. Total here is 41.5. Biggest piece of injury news in this one, Zach Charbonnet listed as doubtful. Ryan, it is Kenneth Walker season. I don't really think you need to sell the people on $5,800 Kenneth Walker, but obviously, one of the best plays of the slate here.
Yeah, it just very easily one of the best plays of the slate. I mean, Seahawks being 7.5-point favorites. Ken Walker ranks behind only Derrick Henry with 0.72 fantasy points per snap while leading over the past 3 seasons. If his snap rate is going to go up to 70-80% without Zach Charbonnet, you do the math there. It's pretty amazing when he's 5,800. So yeah, really love Walker here. JSN is also just completely mispriced for what his role has been. 41% target share through 2 weeks, leads the NFL. Like the only concern here with him at 6,500 and a lot of ownership is, what if the Seahawks just kind of run all over the Saints and they don't need to throw? That has clearly been their idea, is first we want to attack on the ground. So that would give me a little bit of pause. But honestly, maybe the JSN ownership comes down a bit now that we get Walker kind of fully integrated into all these industry projections as a bell cow. So that might also be a decent angle. But yeah, it's really just those two guys for me on the Seahawks side. Scott Barrett I think is trying to sell us on Sam Darnold. I don't know if I can go there at 5,100 when we have so much other quarterback value. But I do think another awesome play on the other side of this game is Juwan Johnson. The Seahawks are very much like an underneath funnel, second most receiving yards per game within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, most DraftKings fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends so far this year. Juwan Johnson's role is incredible. Leads all players at all positions in snaps, which is a crazy stat. So yeah, any of these like Ken Walker plus Juwan Johnson minis are pretty interesting to me. Don't know if I would full stack this game, but it could be low-key fun. Like the Saints with their pace of play are always pushing opposing teams to also run a lot of plays. So it's kind of interesting. It's way more, I don't feel like as strongly as I did when it was Mac Jones at 4K against the Saints last week. But I think on a similar angle, like this could be a very fun for fantasy type of game.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't think I can be sold on Sam Darnold sort of like in a vacuum looking at this slate. I do think, Sam Darnold paired with JSN is a really interesting late swap angle if you need to get off like a Justin Herbert or a Dak Prescott or a Caleb Williams. This 4 p.m. slate has, I think, 3 of my favorite teams to target overall. But obviously, if you're chasing, if some of your 1 p.m. slate plays fail, you're going to want to swap, and you're probably going to end up wanting to do it with either like a Sam Darnold, maybe a Mac Jones, maybe a Kyler Murray. So all of those guys are pretty interesting here. Graham, anything to add on this game before we move on?
Yeah, I love Juwan. I mean,
yeah,
this just makes a ton of sense. I mean, he's 3,900. He's only 300 more expensive than he was the previous week. And, like Ryan said, the Saints have not been good against tight ends. But, I mean, Juwan's usage is like legitimately top 5 at the position. He is top 5 in routes run. He's got a 32% for first read target share, which I'm laughing because that's just like crazy. Like I've always thought Juwan Johnson was a good player, but just like, he's always kind of been pigeonholed in these part-timey-ish roles, but like they're just taking the training wheels off, treating this guy as like a legitimately good full-time player, which he kind of always has had the potential to be. But yeah, I mean, 32% first read target share, full-time player for a guy who's 3,900. I mean, only Trey McBride has a higher first read target share among tight ends. McBride is we'll talk McBride here in a second. He's going to be the mega chalk this weekend, I think, along with Tyler Warren. But, the field just kind of hasn't caught up, I don't think, fully on this Juwan Johnson role. And he's a really nice price on DraftKings because, I mean, he seems just like a lock for 7-8 targets in this spot. And again, he's sub 4K. I think Johnson and Bowers are my 2 favorite tight ends this week.
Yeah. Hard not to like Johnson, especially at tight end. That's a position where we're just always chasing volume. And I mean, like you said, 7, 8, 9 targets at 3,900 on a team that plays really fast, is going to be playing from behind, forced to throw. Really good spot for Juwan. Chris Olave also projecting okay in this game. You could maybe get to a little Rashid Shaheed. I think those are two guys who, again, I'd consider more late swap options if you're a little desperate, a little behind once the 4 p.m. slate rolls around. Let's talk about a really fun game here. Denver Broncos at the Los Angeles Chargers. Broncos are 2.5 point underdogs. Total here is 45.5, kind of oscillating between 45.5, 46.5. On the injury front, no Evan Ingram for Denver this week. No Will Dissly for the Chargers. Graham, I love stacking the Chargers side of this game. Love stacking this game in general. Justin Herbert feels like an awesome play. He's rushing more. Chargers lead the NFL in pass rate over expectation. All his pass catchers are very reasonably priced here. I also think the other good angle with a guy like Justin Herbert, and, should have mentioned this too with, potentially stacking Jalen Hurts in that Rams game, is with everyone paying down at quarterback, that's going to force you into like a very sort of prototypical build where you're paying up at running back, paying up a little bit more at wide receiver. When you get to a guy like Herbert, that does sort of flip things a little bit, where now you're coming down a little bit more at running back, coming down a little bit more at wide receiver, and it does get you off that chalk build. What do you think of the Chargers side of this game and this game in general?
If I'm playing a quarterback over 6K on DraftKings this week, it's Justin Herbert. I think you can make an argument that he projects as the best quarterback play on the slate, like by far. It's a twofold thing. The Chargers were really pass heavy at the end of last season when Herbert got fully healthy, and open this season, like you said, they've just been, basically letting him carry the team. The second part of that equation is that they can't run the ball. Like, this team just has not been able to open up rushing lanes at all. Omarion Hampton is averaging 0.8 of a yard before contact per carry. It's not great. And, they'll eventually fix this probably by midseason. It might just take time for this, Rashawn Slater-less offensive line to kind of gel. But for this week specifically, yeah, I mean, Herbert plus McConkey plus Keenan Allen just makes a ton of sense. I think in basically every projection model that you look at this week, no matter whose projections it is, Keenan Allen's going to pop as one of the top 3 values. It's either him or Rome Odunze, in my mind, is the top value on this slate. And Quentin Johnston probably catches a Pat Surtain shadow. I think that's, it's a little interesting because, like, they take away Johnston, they take away the, the deep shot over the top with Surtain. It's going to force everything to the middle of the field and underneath. And to me, that's just all McConkey, all Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I really like that angle. I think it's a great double stack with Keenan Allen and McConkey. And, this is a slate where a lot of people are going to be tempted by Wentz. A lot of people are going to be tempted by Mariota because those guys are just so cheap. And that's going to reduce the ownership of a guy like Herbert, who I think on a more normal slate would be, a top 3 highest owned quarterback pretty easily. Might not be the case here in week 3. Ryan, curious what you think of this game. Any love for the Broncos side? Bo Nix has not played well so far this season, but it's, I think, somewhat easy to like at least Cortland Sutton and Troy Franklin as reasonably priced bring back options here.
Yeah, also totally love this game. Totally love that exact Herbert double that you guys outlined. Just want to push a little even harder for Lad McConkey. Like, this is an amazing schematic matchup for him. It's perfect. A lot of man coverage, a lot of blitzing from the Broncos. All of that is great for McConkey in particular. So yeah, definitely going to have a lot of that Herbert, McConkey, Keenan double. And I do think that you can run it back with Troy Franklin down at 4K. He saw the highest route share we have ever seen a non-Cortland Sutton receiver have under Sean Payton on the Broncos, up at 84%. And he made good on it, 30% target share. He had 4 designed targets. He was kind of in that underneath designed role as well. And what's kind of fun is that all of those came against 2 high looks last week, and the Chargers are always running a ton of these 2 high looks. So it's a great schematic matchup for Franklin as well. You can kind of get onto potentially a year 2 breakout, like at a bit of a cheaper price. And the thing with Sutton is that his route share was the lowest he has ever seen under Sean Payton last week. So it could just be a 1-week thing, and Sean Payton is pulling the football away from us once again and laughing at us. But I really like Franklin as the bring back here. It is pretty easy to fit either Sutton or Franklin, so I will have both of it, especially if you do kind of pay down at wide receiver or at tight end with like those Wicks or Musgrave punts that we talked about earlier. You can be pretty flexible just at stacking this game specifically by paying up to Herbert, just by accessing those punts there. So yeah, I am pretty excited by this. Knicks, I don't think I'm going to get to. It sort of makes sense. The Chargers have also been very much a pass funnel this year. It's been hard to run on them. But yeah, just with how Knicks has played, I'm very clearly going to prefer Herbert.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Knicks is actually projecting as an okay value, but I mean, only 400 more for Justin Herbert. I would rather go in that direction, but do think this is a very, very fun game to stack up. Let's move on to the premier game of the slate from pretty much every perspective. Dallas Cowboys at the Chicago Bears. Cowboys are favored by 1.5 total here, 50.5, easily the highest on the main slate. On the injury front, DeAndre Swift listed as questionable with a quad issue. He only got in limited practices this week. On the Dallas side, Kevontae Turpin good to go after a neck issue in week 2. Graham, this is easily the best game of the week from a total perspective, and arguably the best play of the week is Rome Odunze, just 5,300. I mean, the usage for Odunze has been incredible through 2 weeks, top 3 among all wide receivers in expected fantasy points per game. And yet he's only 5,300. I mean, you got to have plenty of love for Rome Odunze in this spot, right?
Yeah, the Odunze stock is going parabolic, man. Like just absolutely through the roof. It's like, yeah, Caleb Williams is what he is at this point. I think we all can kind of see that. The bottom line is like, the usage and this player it's like borderline perfect. Like he's 5,300, like you said, he should be closer to 65 or 6,700 even at this point in the season. Wide receiver 3 by expected fantasy points, wide receiver 9 in first read target share. I think he's easily the best play on the slate. I think everybody else will kind of see that too. He's going to push for 25% ownership right now. Jackson Smith-Njigba projects as the highest owned player, or excuse me, the highest owned receiver on this slate. I think that'll be Odunze, but it's just for good reason. I mean, he's just way too cheap. Cowboys have gotten absolutely killed by outside wide receivers, giving up nearly 200 yards per game to start this season. They don't play any man coverage, but their zones are just so leaky. Trevon Diggs is just not a good player anymore at this point. My favorite way to play this game, Jake, is like I can make the upside case for Caleb Williams. I think he's going to push for ownership. I like Dak stacks a lot better. I like Dak with Lamb, bring it back with Rome. I think that's my favorite way to play it. Dak probably going to be 8-9% ownership. We're seeing like, closer to 12-13 for Caleb Williams. Right now, our ownership projections have Caleb Williams as the chalkiest quarterback on the slate. Dak getting basically half of the ownership. And I think you can make that a case that Dak not only like has, a similar projection. I think you can make a case that he has better upside. Like Jalen Johnson is out for this game. Kyler Gordon is out. They're missing their 2 best and only good cornerbacks. And the Bears have just been destroyed. They're giving up nearly 1 full passing fantasy point per dropback this season. I love Dak doubles. I like Dak with Lamb. You could just play Dak and Pickens. Bring it back with Rome if you don't want to play Lamb. There's just so many angles to this game. I think Jake Ferguson also makes a lot of sense at 4K. I know I said Juwan Johnson's one of my favorite plays, but this is a good matchup for Ferguson, good schematic matchup. I think these receivers just have so much more upside, with the Bears missing their top guys. Pickens, Lamb, and Dak, I think doubles just make a ton of sense on the slate.
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. Dak Prescott scored 26 DraftKings points last week. His price didn't change. If you exclude last week, like I said on last week's cashing points, 5,900, that's the cheapest we've seen Prescott at since week 13 of 2019. And this is, probably the best defensive matchup he's going to get all year because he can't play his own defense. Ryan, what do you think about the Cowboys side of this game? And Ryan, I'm also curious if you have any love for DJ Moore. I think he's going to go a little under the radar in this game. Rome Odunze can't catch every pass. And, obviously the Dallas defense, like I said, basically just as bad as Chicago's defense. So yeah, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so first I'll say that Dak Prescott doubles my favorite double stack on this slate. Regardless of ownership, that's what I'm going to have the most of. That's what I feel the best about. Part of it is because, kind of as Graham alluded to, Jake Ferguson is a totally sick play. He would actually be my preferred way to like bring down ownership a bit from like the more popular CD and Roma Dunze is just introducing Jake Ferguson into the double stack. 15 expected fantasy points per game, second best among tight ends. Great schematic matchup, a lot of cover two, a lot of too high looks from the Bears and from Dennis Allen. And yeah, DJ Moore, as you bring up, also an interesting schematic angle with the Cowboys running so much zone. Moore has been better than Odunze against it. But I do want to like point out with this game that despite all of the talk about the cloud coverage that the Cowboys play, like everything that really both of these defensive coordinators do that is intended to like slow down the opposing number one wide receiver and deny them like chances to win one-on-one and bust open defenses, both of these units have been getting completely roasted. So you can honestly just throw out some of the schematic stuff for this and just say, yeah, I want every piece of this game and I want a lot of it just because of the huge difference in total. It's 5 points better by over under than any other game on this slate. So yeah, that was kind of my biggest drum I wanted to bang. Is just this whole game's amazing. Cowboys side, clearly my favorite. Rome, clearly my favorite bring back. Only other guy I want to mention is Javonte Williams. We do have to talk about him. Even though he's priced up to 6,100, still projecting decently well. Again, Cowboys highest total on the slate. Javonte, 17 expected fantasy points per game through 2 weeks, has a really good role. And this Bears defense has been especially vulnerable to man gap runs. Javonte Williams is, I believe, leading the NFL in yards per carry on man gap, if not very close to it. Leading the NFL in success rate on man gap, third highest yards per carry on man gap. So even Javonte is interesting. I think you can onslaught the Cowboys here as well. Just go Dak plus Lamb, Ferg, and Javonte, or mix and match Pickens in for one of those. Yeah, I just want to go crazy on this game because at least so far, the projected ownership in the field is not going as crazy as I think it should on this game.
Yeah, I do wonder if we see Dak and some of these Cowboys projected ownerships come up a little bit as we head into Sunday morning. Because, I mean, looking at the numbers right now, it seems like a pretty glaring hole in ownership projections across the industry if Dak's not going to be a little higher owned in what is basically a perfect spot. I also think if you're stacking this game up super heavy, you could go with a little DeAndre Swift, assuming he suits up here. 80% of backfield XFP through 2 weeks. I'm not particularly excited about it. Would much rather play Javonte Williams if I had to choose a running back here. All right, let's finish this off with the Arizona Cardinals at the San Francisco 49ers. Arizona, 2.5-point underdogs here. Total is 44.5. On the injury front, Brock Purdy, very unlikely to play per Kyle Shanahan. Juwan Jennings missed practice all week, and he is listed as questionable with an ankle issue. That ankle issue is new, so certainly want to keep an eye on him. Graham, with or without Brock Purdy, we at least know where the volume is going in terms of the backfield. Christian McCaffrey, 24.1 expected fantasy points per game through 2 games. That's the best full season workload in fantasy points data history if he's able to keep it up for an entire season. Also a 23% target share. Graham, I know you said he's not your favorite running back play of the slate, but man, I mean, you got to have some love for Christian McCaffrey given the workload that he's earning. Hasn't been particularly efficient, but the usage has just been incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely like projects as the best running back play on the slate. He's just finally the right price though, man. Like he was 73 and now, what was he, 75 last week? We've just been jamming that in. Now he's 8,200. I think that's just the right price. I think you can make a case, like I was saying earlier, for Bijan and Barkley right behind them, projecting like maybe just within a point of McCaffrey based on their usage. And then, like we talked about with Jonathan Taylor, I mean, he's right up there, maybe just behind Bijan and Barkley. You mentioned Juwan Jennings. I think Ricky Pearsall is really interesting. It's kind of like, everybody was pretty excited to play him as a cheaper kind of punt play a couple weeks ago. 4,700, I believe. Now he's up to 55. But if we don't get Jennings, I mean, they have literally nothing left. Like George Kittle is obviously out. Jennings, even if he plays, maybe he's just beat up. He's been dealing with 3 different injuries this season. Pearsall is going to go massively underowned because, like we were just talking about, Rome Odunze, awesome play. Jacoby Myers will pick up some ownership at 5,600. So you kind of have Pearsall split in between 2 guys. Also DJ Moore, he's definitely going to pick up some ownership too in Caleb doubles. Ricky Pearsall will be like 8-9% owned, maybe if that. Like that quite a bit. Cardinals obviously play a ton of zone coverage, so Pearsall is not going to, be facing man a ton, which is good for him. Cardinals side, like I think I said earlier, Trey McBride, man, like definitely projects as the highest owned tight end on this slate, but I think I straight up just prefer Bowers. Like I think that's kind of where I'm at. McBride's awesome, but Fred Warner is a real menace. 49ers have been great against tight ends for 2 years, 3 years running now. I think that's like the one case against McBride is this matchup.
Yeah, that is the one case against McBride. For what it's worth, last 3 games against San Francisco, still at about 10.5 targets per game for Trey McBride, so the volume should be there. But I think I'm with you. I think I prefer Brock Bowers, especially relative to the projected ownership that we're seeing on McBride. We have him at 22%. I'm seeing anywhere from 15 to 20% elsewhere across the industry. Ryan, any other thoughts on this game? I don't think I really want to get to the Arizona side unless I absolutely have to in a late swap. Certainly don't want to get to this backfield that does seem to be trending toward a timeshare between James Conner and Trey Benson. Any other thoughts on this game before we wrap up here?
Yeah, this kind of just is the late swap game to me. Like just late swapping onto Mac Jones plus Juwan plus Pearsall or CMC if you're not already there in that lineup is pretty solid to me. I'm going to agree with Graham on McBride. Like at ownership, paying up that much when, Brock Bowers is right there. And also when we have like 3 really strong tight ends right around the 4K range with Juwan Johnson, Jake Ferguson, and I'll even throw Kyle Pitts in there. That's just not how I want to build, especially if that is the chalk build this week is pay down at QB, pay up to Trey McBride at tight end. So those are really my only thoughts. I think outside of late swap, assuming that Jennings is active, I do clearly prefer him to Pearsall just because of how the Cardinals are such a big underneath funnel, and Pearsall has kind of been operating more as the deep threat for the 49ers this year, and the Cardinals have been very good at limiting the deep ball, 3rd fewest receiving yards per game allowed on throws over 20 yards downfield since the start of last season. But that's really it for me. I don't think any other thoughts here. I think we covered this pretty well.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. I think this is a really good game to late swap to if you're chasing. Otherwise, not a game I'm going to be stacking particularly heavily. All right, really appreciate everybody for tuning in to the Week 3 edition of Cashing Points. Thanks to Graham and Ryan for the great analysis, and we will see all of you guys at the top of the leaderboards.
What? Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.